Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Kiss Album Focus. I am Ray Hale.
Hi, my name is Brian, and welcome to Alive.
Alive! So, Brian, we started this off. We went through the first three albums, and Kiss is about to break the mainstream big time. We talked about how the first album didn't do a whole lot. The second album did less than that, but something is happening with Dress to Kill, real grassroots fans going to shows, buying records, and getting into the band. And when this album drops, it's going to get big.
Oh, yeah. And there's just starting to get a little bit of word of mouth passing around from Dress to Kill. They weren't by any means like a big, huge, successful band yet, but they were just starting to turn a little fire on. And, Alive would be, obviously their first live album would be the album that takes them to that next level. Now, how much of the album is actually live is maybe a little up for debate.
We're going to talk about that.
But we'll get into that.
So somebody in the Kiss camp had the great idea. Said, hey, look, what we've done in the recording studio is not necessarily translating, but we're now at this point, Kiss is starting to headline in certain markets. They don't need to be the opening act on a number of different bills. So how do we get that to the audience? Because if people see that or hear that, they'll start buying. And some idiot in the room said, well, how about a live album? Which was not a big deal in those days. I mean, the live album was never successful. It was like catalog filler.
Yeah,
at this point in time.
And really, Alive really even just got, for anybody that doesn't know, Alive really got its title because Kiss was such a big fan of the band Slade.
Yeah.
So, Slade put out an album in 1972 called Slade Alive. Mm-hmm. Slade is I guess they're a British band, right? So that they were a little bigger in England than they were in the States, I think. But Kiss were huge fans of them, most of the guys or all the guys, and that's why they ended up naming it Alive. But I think the Slade Alive album, I think it did okay in England, but I didn't really set the world on fire.
Because, no, and again, a lot of the acts at the time, you had a big live album up to that point. There's probably the two big ones were Woodstock, but that was more for the event and less of the recording. And I'm not sure if I think the concert at Bangladesh, no, it was probably around 74, 75. But really the live album becomes a huge deal because of Kiss Alive and Frampton Comes Alive.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But at this point, they took a huge risk because they didn't sell very well. Not just the band, but live records in general. So they came up with this idea and they said, hey, look, let's record the band live. And so the album audience can actually get to experience the way Kiss is supposed to be experienced. The results were mixed. At least as far as the recording is concerned. So now you mentioned that how much of the album is alive. Well, the reality of it is probably 25% of the album is actually culled from live performance.
Yeah, it's not the lion's share.
No, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So actually, I did a lot of research and had to go and listen to a lot of different things. So what is legit on the album is the crowd noise, but it was crowd noises from the 4 shows that they taped in various parts and were edited and doubled and tripled to make it the audience sound bigger.
It was like the greatest hits of crowd noises,
right?
That they went around
played on a loop
from each show and put them together into the, and then like Bryce said, double tracked them and triple tracked them, and then made them these huge crowd noises.
And so we know essentially all the drums are legit. That's live, pulled from various shows. They recorded 4 shows that year, and pretty much everything else, there's bits and pieces that basically had to be re-recorded. Had to be re-recorded in the studio. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It wasn't just necessarily to fix imperfections, but a couple examples is, so Kiss is known for their explosions. So when that loud explosion goes off in the during the show, it creates this compression into the microphones where the microphones essentially blank out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make for a good live recording to listen to at home.
No, I mean, and you got just basic things like, look, when you perform live, I mean, there's always times where, you're maybe a little late getting to the mic, or, you're a little out of breath because in particular, you maybe ran a little extra around the stage than you normally do, or it's a little hotter in the concert hall that night. So you're sweating a little more. So you're a little more out of breath. There's always those kind of things with live shows that even the, even the best super pros run into from time to time.
We've talked before about how at one point in time we were in the Kiss bootleg trading business. Oh, yeah. And I will challenge any Kiss fan, especially the ones that complain about how live is alive. Go to any show in that era and you will see exactly how many times Paul Stanley is either late to the mic or pulls off from the mic. He doesn't complete an actual phrase many times. And a lot of it is, it's a show band.
Yeah.
So he wants to twirl his head a little bit. Well, guess what? You got that microphone. That's you have that microphone in your face. Okay. You have that microphone in your face and you start going like that. The sound goes everywhere but the mic. Okay. That got awkward, but I'm going to leave that in because it's funny. So that's kind of a big deal. And plus, if you watch the band at the time, they don't stand there and do this. They're moving all like over crazy. The place.
Oh, yeah.
So now try do a bar chord in a full sprint.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Paul's dancing all over the place. Like the whole time he's shimmying up to the mic. He's dancing behind the mic. I mean, and the whole time it's like, so even if you're in great shape, eventually some of that stuff is going to, make you a little late to the mic or wear you down a little bit or have you cut a little corners some nights because you're a little more tired than others. It happens.
Mm-hmm. And it's also important to know, I didn't know how to explain it. And then if you read various books and statements and interviews, Paul Stanley actually came up with the best thing ever. It says people have a tendency to hear with their eyes. Now, on the face, that sounds stupid, but it's actually 100% true when it comes to Kiss. When you go to the show, and you know what I'm talking about, because we had the bootlegs for some of the shows we went to. If you go to the show, you're sitting there and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then we get a bootleg of the show we just went to, and you go, that wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
There's so much happening that you can't absorb just the sound. You're looking at all of the things that are going on the stage. Paul Stanley's doing this. There's explosions. The crowd's going nuts. Like, it's this whole big thing. And guess what? Sometimes Paul Stanley doesn't sing great, or sometimes Gene doesn't play great, or Ace isn't playing great because he's doing whatever.
Yeah. It happens. I mean,
yeah.
You even the best, like I said, I mean, they flub a note here or there. They miss a chord here or there. They miss a cue or something. Especially when you're playing live in front of all those people, the lights, the explosions, there's so much going on. It's sensory overload. I mean, it happened to the best of them,
Oh yeah. And I'm not saying it as a complaint at all. I'm just saying that, I would have loved to have been in the room when they got the master recordings back to play back and go, okay, let's put together this live album. And they went, that sounds horrible. Are we that bad? But the sound is just a piece of the show.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't always get that with Kiss, or forget that. The hardcores forget that. Everything they're doing on stage at some point is going to subtract from the ability to play. And that kind of gets lost. So I don't blame them one bit, because once you throw that record on or put the CD in or play your iPod, Alive is amazing.
Yeah, and this is also, let's not forget too that Kiss at this point, I mean, yes, they had 3 albums out, but they were not, I don't think, what you would call like seasoned pros of the music business at that point yet. I mean, we're talking what, 2.5 years into their career roughly. So I mean, it's not like, I mean, and also not to mention the limitations of technology at the time too, compared to stuff that was done for like, which we'll cover later, but like, Alive 4 Symphony and like all that stuff that came. So I mean, they hadn't really, hit that level where they were like, okay, we're absolute vet. We're going in here and we have everything nailed down and it's all tight and it's all perfect. I mean, they're 2.5 years in. They're not even nearly as big as they would become yet.
No. So, and it's interesting you point that out, because you're absolutely true, especially if you're a fan of the live stuff and you got a lot of the bootlegs musically. They continue to get better and better and better at what they do. By the time they get to the mid 80s, especially on Gene and Paul's side of things, Paul can do all the flips and jumps and running around and screaming and not miss a beat with his guitar.
Yeah, just practice too, just general good old practice and experience that, comes into play as they move further into their career.
And we're still early enough in their career where they're literally making it up as they go along. There's no rules. There's no path for Kiss to follow. There's not a whole lot at this point in time. They're not nicking or chasing a trend. They are forging the path. And there's just no precedent for it. So Kiss Alive is taken from 4 shows that they recorded. So the first one, the first concert that they recorded was
Cobo Hall.
It was Cobo Hall, May 16th, 1975. And it is not good. It really is not good at all. In fact, it was a little bit of a shock. So I've read a number of different books. They record the first show, just to go over some dates here real quick. They recorded the first show. It's at Cobo Hall, Detroit, Michigan. That's May 16th, 1975. Then they go back recording on June 21st, 1975 in Cleveland, Ohio. And then it's July 20th, 1975 and July 23rd, 1975. So that first show they recorded, and you can actually go online, go to YouTube and look for Alive outtakes or the alternate Alive. A lot of what you get from this show is actually pretty bad. It doesn't sound good. It actually, in some ways, it doesn't sound like Kiss. I don't know if they froze up for the fact that this show is being recorded for a potential live album. So they were trying to play it safe. I don't know what they were doing, but there's a lot of stuff out there that it's not good at all.
Yeah. There's some clips on YouTube and stuff. In fact, I think in one of the first or second episode we did of this, I think I had a piece of that Cobo Hall show on behind me on YouTube while we were recording, just playing in the background. And, and I was watching a little bit before we started. And yeah, I mean, I was like, yeah, I mean, you could definitely see that this is not their star making turn.
No, it seems like to me, it just kind of seems like it was very safe. By the time you get into the next show that they record in Cleveland, Ohio, it's better, but it's still not great. It kind of, the tracks they actually played, well, there wasn't the excitement in the Kiss set. It kind of slowed down a little bit, became a little bit more plodding. Things weren't going together. But by the time you get to, it's almost, I think it's like a weekend of shows. It's July 20th in Davenport, Iowa, and July 23rd in Wildwood, New Jersey. That's where I think the bulk of Alive, especially the drum performances, were culled from.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And it's actually pretty fascinating. So we get into the set list of the shows, and it's pretty interesting. So this is basically, we got Deuce, Strutter, Got to Choose, Hotter Than Hell, Firehouse, Nothing to Lose, Come On and Love Me, Parasite, She, Watching You, 100,000 Years, Black Diamond, Rock Bottom, Cold Gin, Rock and Roll All Night, and Let Me Go Rock and Roll. What a good show.
Oh, it's just it's a killer set list. I mean, from start to finish, it's a killer set list.
And I always find it amazing when you listen to Alive. It is so good. You're still missing Detroit Rock City. You're missing King of the Nighttime World. Shout It Out Loud. All these songs that are yet to come.
Big staples. Yeah.
And it's pretty much, the show is pretty much perfect.
It's great. I mean, the set list is basically flawless from start to finish. I mean, it is like a flawless set list for a live album. I mean, it's basically the greatest hits of their first 3 albums played live. And most of the versions are better than they are on the album.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure there's any song on this live album where the original recording is better. I don't think so.
Yeah,
at least I'm looking at it. I really don't think so. And that was one of the complaints that we both had in some circumstances with the earlier albums. It's like, I like the album as a whole. The songs are great, but if I'm going to listen to this song, I'm going to Alive.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. The band, it's loud, it's energetic. You got the cannon fire being used for explosions. It creates it tries to recreate a Kiss show for just the ears only. Like, your imagination is, things are blowing up here, and they're going crazy, and Paul Stanley's doing this, and Gene is bleeding, and it doesn't get much better than this.
Oh yeah. Well, it's definitely just, I mean, it's probably the first live album that I ever really listened to from start to finish. And to this day, just still, and again, a lot of the reason maybe it still holds up is because of the overdubs and the corrections and stuff that they did. But whatever the case is, the finished product is a killer live album.
So what did this do for Kiss? Well, it pretty much changed the game for them. So essentially what you ended up getting out of this album, as far as the album charts, peak position, US Billboard Top 200, it peaked at 9. In Canada, it was number 3. Elsewhere, like Japan, for whatever reason, was only 56. It immediately started selling, and at this point in time, I think it immediately was certified gold, but at this point, I think it has sold over 6 million copies, which is a lot for a double live record.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is where the switch got flipped. This is once Alive came out and word was spreading about it and everything, and the critics were still kind of rough on it.
Yeah.
I mean, overall at the time, I mean, most of the contemporary critic reviews at the time were, not super kind to the album.
No.
But the fans loved it when they got it, and everybody started really hearing it, and word of mouth started spreading. I mean, it flipped the switch for them. It made them, rock stars.
Yes. Essentially overnight. I mean, we're talking like, I think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we know that the first Kiss album, it sold roughly about 100,000 copies, which is not great. Hotter Than Hell sold less than that. By the time Dressed to Kill came out, I think they were ecstatic that they got close to 200,000 copies at the time. And Alive just blew away everybody's expectations. I mean, even they were shocked by it, because the numbers kept piling in. It's just, we got more and more orders for this album. By the end of the year, they're going to sell about 1 million copies of this record. And it's all word of mouth, because they had no help from anybody.
It's just crazy coming off of, like you just said, coming off of 3 albums that between them sold 300,000 copies at
Mhm.
best, 350 between all three. And then in a year, you're selling 1 million copies off one. They had to be ecstatic.
And here's the best thing, because based on the success of that album, their back catalog starts selling again.
Yep.
So now Kiss is actually in a position where Kiss in Casablanca wasn't making any money. I mean, they actually were hitting the road at a loss. A Kiss show is very expensive. You got a lot more expenses than the average band, and then you got to lug the stage setup from. This wasn't happening at this time. A lot of concerts didn't have this. It was a generic stage with people in jeans playing their guitars.
Yep. And they had a banner behind them that had like the band name.
Yeah,
that was their stage show.
yeah. And it's absolutely crazy. So Kiss is already changing the way things are being done, but now they're actually making money at this point. Well, at least Casablanca is making money. Kiss is making more money, but they're not rich at this point. I think they were happy at that point in time. They were making they went from $150 a week to $200 a week. I mean, sure, that money in 1975 is different than what it is today, but you still got road expenses. You still have to eat.
Definitely.
They're literally on the first tour, the first couple of tours, they're like buying a pack of bologna and splitting it. And that's how they ate. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So Alive basically really only had one single, which you hear on the radio all the time. It's a live version of Rock and Roll All Night.
Really? I've never heard that. Really?
No, not really. That's typically the version you hear on the radio if you were to hear a Kiss song. And believe it or not, because of the success, it's actually starting to get plays on the radio now. So at this time in 1975. So, there's, even though they didn't have critical success, a lot of the newspapers and the rock journals at the time did not like them.
Nope. But they were talking about them.
They were talking about them.
That's the thing. Okay, a lot of what they were saying was kind of negative, and they were just saying, "Oh, they're just a throwaway band." They were saying, "Oh, the record company's trying to position them as like hot new teen idols or something like that, and they're just throwaway band or whatever." But the fans were fighting back, and they were screaming back like, "No, they are not a disposable band. This is a kick-ass rock band, and we want to be a part of the kick-ass shows they're putting on."
Yeah. So at some point they had to at least acknowledge their existence, and Kiss is winning the fight at this point in time. So actually Kiss fans are winning the fight. There's nothing Kiss can do about it. And they're, the record companies, their manager have been trying to do whatever deal to get Kiss involved in something, and people just are turning their back on them. They don't want to get involved in it. Like it's some weird, I don't know, thing. I don't know where I was going with that, but the fact of the matter is like it's Kiss fans that won.
Absolutely. I mean, and I mean, look, Kiss won as well. I mean, look, they finally became rock stars now. I mean, they had been trying for 2.5 years roughly at that point. They finally crossed over. They're now selling albums. Like Ray said, they're now starting to push some of their back catalog back out the door. Their first 3 albums. The Alive album is huge. The fans are loving it. It's doing a lot, just groundbreaking for like live albums in general and what a live album can do for a band going forward, and would pave the way for some of the huge live albums for, other bands to come that have become legendary since. And they're finally getting all that attention that they're looking for. And it's going to also up the ante, as we'll see with their next couple albums. In my opinion, it's going to also up the ante with what they want to do with a studio album, what they want to do creatively. And it's going to sort of catapult them to the next level. And we'll talk about that more with Destroyer. But
so
I think it does that for them.
That's the double-edged sword of success, right? So now that you are successful and they have been catapulted in the mainstream with this album, now you have to step up to the plate and be able to follow up to it. And we're going to get into that on the next one.
Or you're just a one-hit wonder, essentially, one album wonder or whatever. So yeah, I mean, you got to come back and say no, that wasn't all we got this too. So and we'll see that they fare quite well with that, I think, with a couple follow-up albums after
absolutely the next set of albums are going to be critical to Kiss's continuing success. Now, the success of this album, there was one big thing that happened after it was released. Now, we talked about Kiss being a headliner in certain markets, Detroit being a big one. Certain cities they could headline. Everywhere else, they had to be a part of a joint bill. After Kiss Alive, they are now the opening act for no one, and they can play their own shows, headline their own events all over the country. So they don't have to worry about getting kicked off any tours anytime soon. And that was a real problem for them because, and one of them being Black Sabbath actually kicked them off of their tour. And it's not because anything they were doing other than the show was such a spectacle that the headliners looked bad.
Yeah, they didn't want to follow it because, if you're a band and Kiss is opening for you, and your show consists of, like you were saying before, a bunch of guys in jeans playing in front of a banner of the band, and the opening act has got explosions and makeup and fire breathing and blood and, and a high energy show, and the crowd is into it. It's like, well, shit, I don't want to follow that.
So we've gone over chart success. Everything is a win. Kiss is rolling aces at this point. Where does Alive rank in your catalog?
I mean, and as I said before, I do the studio album separately from everything that's not a studio album that I consider not a Kiss studio album, because I would also put the solo albums in the compilation live album category just because it wasn't Kiss. It was, So in the grand scheme of things, for me, Alive 1 is number 2.
Number 2, grand scheme of things.
I think it's one of my favorite live albums I've ever heard. And I think the second best, live/compilation album Kiss has ever done.
Yeah. So you and I, we both ranked differently because of how we view it. And that's really cool. That's why, I enjoy talking to you about it, because we have different perspectives on it. I ranked every album that we were going to discuss 1 through 35. Alive is number 1 for me. It is the most played Kiss album in my catalog. It is quintessential Kiss.
It really is. I mean, look, no matter how you cut it, this is essential listening for anybody who's even the most casual of Kiss fan, even somebody who's not a Kiss fan, who's just a fan of, rock and roll and hard rock and classic rock and that kind of genre. This is required listening.
Yeah, it's the starting point. If you had a foreign exchange student show up and you want to tell somebody about Kiss, you're going to give them Alive. You're not passing them The Elder.
No, you're not. I'm certainly not.
I'm not doing that. But if you're going to explain or try to explain what Kiss is, Alive is the only way to tell that story.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
It really is.
Do you have anything else you want to add to the conversation?
No.
Did we miss something?
I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, look, Alive is quintessential Kiss. I mean, as you can see from both of our rankings, it literally can barely get any better. It is top of the food chain as far as I'm concerned. And my rankings of albums in their catalog, both studio and non-studio, it can change a little from time to time, depending on the mood I'm in. an album I have at number 2 today might be number 3 in 3 weeks, and might. So I mean, there's a little wiggle room depending on what kind of mood you're in and stuff like that. But the one thing that will never change is that Alive would never fall out of the top 5 Kiss things ever made.
I tell you what, because we've known a lot of Kiss fans, we've been to shows, we've been to conventions. I think if any Kiss fan made a statement that Alive was not even considered in the top 10 of their Kiss lineup, I think the crowd would probably slit their throat. I mean, it's generally it is like the best. You can argue many albums on merit, like the first one, Destroyer or whatever. Is okay. You think that's your favorite album, and that you think that's the best one. I get it. I can't necessarily disagree with it. It's not my choice, but I see what you're saying. How you don't have Alive in the top 5? You just I don't know what you're doing.
I mean, in my, like I said, I have it at number 2, and literally, and we'll talk about it when we get to it, but literally the difference between number 2 and number 1 on that list is
one's rated a 99, one's a 98.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking a fraction of a point off here. I mean, it's so close.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I got. The only thing that I didn't cover is obviously Alive comes out and Kiss hits the road. And guess what? You get the Alive show.
Yep.
That's the set list. So for the Alive tour going into the recording of Destroyer, this is what they got. The only change that they made is they ended up swapping Let Me Go Rock and Roll with Rock and Roll All Night right at the very end. So the show always closes with Rock and Roll All Night. Other than that, if you loved Alive at that time and you got a ticket, that's exactly what you got.
And that's honestly, in my opinion, that's honestly pretty cool because, you get the live album, right? Or let's say you see the show first and it's the Alive show and you're like, oh, this was so cool. Like what an awesome show. And then you go get the live album and it's, obviously it has some overdubs and stuff as we talked about, but it's literally the show you saw. So it's not like, when you're listening to it, that's just going to help bring back the memories of the hopefully good time you had seeing the show live and everything. And yeah, just can't say enough good things about Alive. Just amazing.
Well, if you've been watching us so far, you know that we're on our 4th album. There's several more to go, and there's a lot of killer records coming up. So even though the 4th album in and Alive basically tops the charts pretty much for the both of us, there's still lots to talk about. So next time we're going to be getting into Destroyer, a huge album for the band. We'll discuss that a little bit. Outside of that, thank you very much for watching. Brian, you got anything you got to say?
Nope, just thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us, and come back for the next episode because it's Destroyer.
Tell us what you think. Please leave your comment. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.